Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
All right, welcome everybody. We'll call this informational meeting for Tuesday, August 27th to order. And we will start out with some committee reports. First, we'll go with the UDC. And Councilor Starr, did you come up with something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I can. The August meeting was kind of that point where we had a chance to, the things that we've been working on and final drafts, getting a chance to get them approved. The first was the 2020-2023 Transportation Improvement Plan. For those following along with acronyms, the TIP that we talk about, the Transportation Improvement Program, that was approved, the final draft. We also took a look at the Transportation Improvement Program, also the TIP amendment. There were a couple of amendments and just some adjustment in planning dollars. And then the final item was the Long Range Transportation Plan Market Research Study. We're about halfway through surveying transportation needs of the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So I'm feeling kind of good after 3 years. I'm starting to get the acronyms down at least enough to fake my way through it. So
Nice work.
thank you.
Thank you for that update. Metro Management Council. Councilor Kiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met on Wednesday, August 14th. We had our first report from new director Scott McMahon, and he gave a very good detailed report. One of the things that was quite interesting, as you recall, early in the month, there was an incident that was videotaped and then posted to YouTube. Well, that increased the calls, and the impact of that is quite serious, especially as it pertains to Metro services provided by the call takers there, the 911 call takers. But there was a 350% increase as a result. 269 calls received on the 9th, 980, a 500% increase on the 10th, and then it went down to a 300%. Obviously, all of those calls, if there was an emergency, they had to politely disconnect as quickly as they could to attend to the emergencies, but it did have an impact on Metro's call volume. He was also happy to report that they're nearly complete with their recruitment process. They have given conditional offers of employment to 6 applicants, and these applicants will be filling the 4 new positions for next year, as well as 2 current vacancies that they have. He credits the number of, because they had over 124 applications for these positions, and he credits the increased number of applications because they established a Facebook page to assist, and credits it for bringing in more interest and awareness. And I want to tell you that Mr. McMahon is only working part-time right now because of retirement requirements from his previous position. So imagine what he'll be able to do when he's full-time. They're working with State 911 Coordination Board on the implementation of the next-gen 911 telephone system. And he had also reported 3 out of 4 radio towers that serve rural fire departments there in Corson, Hartford, and Humboldt. They've been inoperable for as long as 18 months due to storm damage and other repairs. So that means that they're just relying on cell phone service currently. We have $5,000 insurance deductible for each event, and estimate that it'll cost between $5,000 and $10,000 to repair the towers. So obviously that's a priority to get that completed. And so then we also reviewed the financial statements for December of 18, as well as January through July of 2019, and we accepted the final audit for the 2018 financial report. And there was an executive session listed on the agenda, but there actually was not an executive session that took place. That was an error. And then we adjourned.
Okay, thank you very much. Move on to City Council open discussion. Anybody? Counselor Kiley?
I have just one other item, if I can find my notes here. This wasn't on the list for the report, so I told Tom that I would just give a very brief review of the first Sioux Empire Leadership Council meeting. You might have noticed that in the notes that the mayor sent out this past weekend that he addressed it. We formally accepted the bylaws, and once again, the council was formed by resolution of not only this body, but bodies of Minnehaha County and Lincoln County as well, and it includes the Second Judicial Circuit, Unified Judicial Circuit, the Public School District, the Area Chamber of Commerce, the Sioux Falls Community Foundation, Avera Health, and Sanford Health Systems. And it's formed to discuss systemic challenges and where practical, coordinate activity among various agencies and programs. However, it is not a governing body. So we accepted the bylaws, which includes the meetings will be open to the public. And the officer rotation, we also selected officers during the meeting, and the positions will rotate annually beginning the first of next year. And the rotation of the chair and vice chair will be amongst the community member, which we haven't selected yet. So if you have a member of the area community, Minnehaha or Lincoln County resident, that you feel would be a good fit, please forward their name to myself or to Aaron Surska, or I could send you the application and you could forward it. So it'll rotate among the community member, the president and CEO of the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, and the president of Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation. So again, the chair position will rotate between those three members. We also, instead of following Robert's Rules of Order, we adopted the modern Rules of Order, which is rather an abridged edition of Robert's Rules. It's a little more friendly, a little bit less formal. We each had an opportunity to talk just briefly, 90 seconds. They actually timed it about what some of each member's priorities were that they wanted to bring forward. And then we set meeting dates. Initially, we're going to meet monthly for the remainder of this year. It was uncertain, so we'll have meetings again in September, October, November. December is still up in the air because the third Wednesday of the month is falling pretty close to that Christmas holiday season. So I will, once we have that finalized, I'll get that scheduled to Mr. Greco so he can have them posted on the public meeting, the notice of public meetings. And then after that, in 2019, we'll be meeting quarterly.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselor Staley?
Well, I had an opportunity this Saturday to do a very interesting activity. It's called the Dunk Tank at the Hungry Hearts fundraiser at the Barrel House. And I'd never been in a dunk tank before. It was kind of like a dunk cage. And Counselor Starr came to make fun of me. He and his wife showed up there and maybe throw a few balls and dunk me in. Well, I lasted about 15 minutes. I ended up, I don't know, hitting my hand. Yeah, my arm got injured in this thing. It's a little dangerous. So for people as old as I am, I guess. So anyway, I was in the tank for 15 minutes, and Starr was out there. I said, "Hey, Pat, help me out here." So he takes off his shoes, and he gets in the dunk tank, and he lasted 10 minutes. So we both we said it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And the mayor did it last year. I encourage one or two of you to try it next year. And let me just say, last year I believe they raised $120,000 to bridge the gap on these kids who can't pay their lunch bills. And the school district's policy, as it reads now, is that initially, if you're deficit on the payment, they give you a verbal warning. I think they might send a letter, and then you get 5 hot meals, then you get 10 snacks, and then you get nothing. So the Hungry Hearts people believe that no child should be set aside for purposes of food not being compensated for that. So it was well worth the effort. And I haven't yet heard what their total was of what they brought in, but there were two principals who were doing it too. Randy Dauberpool's wife. They were towards the end of the day. I was going to call them and give them a heads up to wear some body armor, but I thought I'll just let the chips fall where they may. So that was the excitement for the weekend.
Are you bruise-free, Counselor Starr?
I am not.
Oh, you're not?
I just can't show them in public.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe, thanks. Anybody else? Okay, wow, this sounds kind of tough. Counselor Erickson.
Just a quick update. 2 weeks ago, we haven't had open discussion, so 2 weeks ago was the backpack program before school started, the Project SOS. There were probably close to 25 city employees who signed up to volunteer that day. Madeline had sent out a message looking for additional volunteers because the air show was the same day, so they were really short. I worked with the mayor that morning and Director Cotter, a few other people from engineer, roads, Director Eckhoff was there later, the next shift to relieve us to leave. It was amazing. The line wrapped around the entire block. The children were able to shop at each grade level and pick out the backpack that meant the most to them. So if they like Paw Patrol or trains or whatever it is based on that age, they got to pick them out. It was really interesting to be able to do crowd control and really get to know these people as they walked through the line, how proud they were to be able to get these school supplies. Some people even came from Mitchell, a family I talked to and met with for a while. They were in town from Mitchell and heard about the program, and even if you're not from Sioux Falls, you still have the opportunity to receive one of these backpacks. It was a fine oiled machine. The people in and out, volunteers, you name it, went on until 4:30. Everyone that showed up was able to get a backpack, and then they also gave them out on Thursday, the morning before school started. They were able to go get a warm breakfast as well as a backpack if they didn't have those school supplies yet. So on the day that we all volunteered, there were 5,882 backpacks given out to students just in that one day. It was incredible. And the weather wasn't the greatest in the morning, and there were people outside that started lining up at 4 a.m. A lot of the people that were there lined up from there explained that where they come from and the countries they came from, they would run out of supplies, and so it was that important, and they felt so helpless at times that they needed to get there that early in the morning to be able to ensure that their children had a backpack. I posted a bunch of pictures to Facebook. It was, again, really eye-opening to be able to be a part of the program and see the impact of that it made. The church across the street gave out free meals, bags of food. There was socks and underwear giveaway, and then another place that did shoe giveaway. So it was really a weekend of preparing those kiddos for back to school. So just wanted to report on their numbers, and I'm sure you've all heard that Madeline Shields is leaving the banquet and will be taking on the new executive director role at Bishop Dudley, which was just announced as well. So just wanted to update you all on that project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to all the counselors who are stepping up in these things around town. Anybody else before we get going? Okay, our timeline is we have to, because we have a joint meeting at 5, we need to have public input by 4:30 and adjourn by 4:45. So no pressure on the presenters here, the questions afterward, but just kind of laying out the timeline as we get going. So first we'll do the Citizens Planning Academy. So welcome to Sam and Russ and whoever else is joining us with that today.
Good afternoon, counselors. With me this afternoon is Director Jeff Eckhoff, Sam Jabilcock, and Shauna Goldhammer from the Planning Development Services Department. I'm here to present to you our third annual 2019 Citizens Planning Academy to the citizens of Sioux Falls. Look, what will the Academy do? It's going to provide an opportunity for our department to showcase what we do best, and that's plan, share our visions and mission statements, and listen to what the citizens also have to say and join in. We want to encourage public participation and empowerment to achieve a better understanding in the community planning process. It's also an educational forum in a community building. It also will increase the public awareness for the month of October because that's National Planning Awareness Month. What is the Citizens Planning Academy? It's an educational program first and foremost, accessible to any resident who's interested in learning more about the role planning plays in building community. The goal is to empower citizens to achieve a better understanding of our processes so that we can effectively engage in the planning efforts both in their neighborhoods and in our city. Participants have the opportunity to become engaged citizen planners and community builders, most importantly. We're proposing 2 sessions this year in October. We estimate 30 to 40 people. The last 3 years, we've had over 30 people join us for those sessions. And we're looking at Mondays, October 7th, and again, Monday, October 28th, from 5:30 to 7:30 at the City Center in the large conference room known as the Cooper Room. We'll have 2 sessions. The first one will be more or less basics of planning and zoning, and we'll focus on the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. What's the difference between the two? What takes precedence over the other, if it does? We'll have an icebreaker. We'll also discuss some of our history of planning in Sioux Falls on a national level and a local level. And we'll also differentiate what is land use and what is zoning. We'll also talk about some of the tools, subdivision ordinance, tax increment financing, the zoning ordinance as well that we have for a well-planned city and growth management. And also we're going to listen through our registration process. What are the other topics that the citizens would like to engage us in, and what can we develop and enhance further in terms of that conversation? The second session would be more or less beyond the basics of planning, and there we're going to visit what are the planning applications. When you see these signs posted all over our community in the different colors, what does that mean? And how can I get involved as a citizen in that process? Also, we're going to talk about what is the public hearing process and the components of that in terms of due process, notifications, and also the recommendations that you receive from Planning Commission, other citizen boards, as well as the City Council. We're going to visit on neighborhood issues. What are some of the hot topics in our neighborhoods? In the past, usually we hear about property values, compatibility, drainage, traffic, and so forth. So with our registration process, we'll kind of have a handle as to what part of our city those participants will be in. We'll kind of get a read as to where they're from, and we can look at some of those issues that might be of importance to them. Again, the registration is to gauge citizen interest, accommodate any space or accessibility needs for the participants, and also to engage and address any citizen topics of interest. Our outreach has been through the month of August and September with news releases and blitzes to the citizens and neighborhood groups and associations. We're before you today. Next week we'll be in front of the City Planning Commission at their noon briefing to describe what the Citizen Planning Academy is. And then also on September 4th of next week, our registration process will begin. And that will go until September 20th. Again, the 2 sessions are in October. October 7th, it's a Monday evening, and October 28th, another Monday evening from 5:30 to 7:30 at the City Center. And on November 5th, we'd like to come back before the City Council and have a brief recognition of those Citizen Planning Academy participants. They've put in the time and the effort. It's kind of a graduation for them as well, and we appreciate their involvement. And we'd just like to recognize them at the beginning of a City Council meeting on the 5th of November. So we'll be working with the clerk's office to schedule that as well. Here to answer any questions that you might have. Again, it's been very successful. That's why we're here, and we're moving forward with it. Director Jeff Eckhoff and the Planning Commission in the past, and currently they're very supportive of it. Our citizen boards are as well. And we seek your blessing to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councilor Kiley.
No questions, but thank you, Russ, for putting on the Planning Academy for our citizens. I think the more information we can get out to our citizens, especially on this topic of planning and development, development services, because we as counselors are taking the majority of our calls in this particular area. The better understanding they have, the easier it is for us to do our job as well, too. And so then that puts individuals out in our community that are conduits of this information. They can pass that on to others, too. So I appreciate your effort. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Okay, next, our city attorney is nice enough to come back after getting bumped last week. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recognize time is at a premium, but I did for 14 years bill in 6-minute increments, so at least 6 minutes.
Nice.
I'm just kidding. I'll make it quick. So our budget, what I wanted to start with is how we fit into the city. A lot of this is, of course, for your consumption. You're aware of that, but also for the public's awareness about what the city attorney's office does, which is, of course, we provide legal representation and opinions to the mayor, the city council, and city officers, employees, and agencies. We do not represent private parties within the city. Of course, we represent the city as a whole. I thought this would be an opportunity to show this. I don't know that a lot of people are aware of the structure of our office, and it did change some when I came in, and frankly, my military mind likes line and block charts, so that's what I tend to use. But under this one, as you can see, from working the top down, of course, I'm the city attorney, and then we have Karen, who serves as a true deputy, Karen Leonard, in that she is a direct supervisor for what in many respects I would call our legal services department. Under that, you can see it includes Public Works with Paul Bankford and Eric Bogue, Keith Allenstein, who's housed out of the Law Enforcement Center and advises on public safety, and Danny Brown and Ryan Sage fulfill a number of different roles within our office, a lot of different categories from code enforcement to real estate to any number of areas similar to that. And then Charla Swenis, who incidentally had a baby girl yesterday morning at 5:36 a.m. So, and mother and daughter are doing well, so we're excited about that. But she, like Eric Bogue, is a relatively recent addition to our office, and she was brought in primarily to assist Karen Leonard on contracts, but is also fulfilling a number of research and other roles. Eric Bogue recently joined the Public Works Department as well. And then under my direct supervision is Daniel Hager, who's responsible for the Human Relations Commission and the ADA. And then he supervises Valerie Shonowell, who's our Human Relations Specialist. And then the Risk Management Department with Glenn Macheski and Colin Enstead are under my supervision, as well as Jamie Palmer on the licensing specialist side, which includes anything from alcohol licensing, malt beverage, liquor licenses to taxis and that sort of thing. Our BHAG, we have two BHAGs, one of which is really fulfilling our role to all the other departments in an effort to help them accomplish theirs. Briefly on ours, I will spare you the eye chart here, but as a housing legal aid group, which is in many respects complementary to the housing clinic that Shelley Unruh is heading up, but this is intended to basically collaborate with USD School of Law and some local attorneys to help facilitate landlord-tenant relationships in Sioux Falls to assist when things get difficult. So basically, there's an educational component to that, as well as in effect, a mediation type role. On the budget side, here's our budget breakdown. Frankly, there aren't really any changes to this. As you can see, the bottom line, when rounded, results in approximately a $40,000 change. What I can tell you is that $39,000 of that is an adjustment to the technology revolving fund, which is in effect non-discretionary on our part. So we were told that's what our numbers will be, and so we're happy to provide our share of that. From a personnel point of view, we did have some tweaks. We have an increase of $9,000 over the course of this year to next year, but we realized some savings on the benefits component of that due to the recent hires that we've had and the different systems that are in place. Other than that, we've increased $1,000 for supplies and materials and $3,000 for training and education purposes to ensure our people are compliant and as current on all the legal issues that are going on in the world to provide the best service possible. So that is my budget presentation.
Wow, well done.
4 minutes.
Yes. very nice.
Any questions? I'd be happy to take any questions on that. Again, there haven't really been any
Councilor
changes.
Staley?
So, yes, Councilor Staley.
Going to the risk manager, Glenn, there, the
Yes.
question I have on that is if a citizen, and I just got a phone call today, ironically, of a woman who had a problem happen, and
I'm sorry, what, had what?
she had something happen with the city.
Okay.
Where there was some damage done, and the city fixed it, but in the midst of that, some other damage had been done to her home. So my question to you is, when that happens to a citizen, what's the process they go through if they want to try to file a claim? Are they calling him directly? Is Glenn the one in charge of that?
It would probably, well, it would start with our main number, the 367-8880, and then they would direct them to Glenn, and Glenn would take it from there. And he could guide them through the claim process.
So but he's the only guy involved, or is he involved in that as well?
Colin is as well. They, you know, when Glenn was hired, you'll recall that he had a background in insurance and risk management, but with the needs, the way the city has grown, and we added that additional position for Colin. They manage the balance of that work, so it'd be a little bit fact specific as to which would go out. Generally, as the risk specialist, Colin would be the point person on that when it comes to whether it's site inspection or whatever the case may be. But
any citizen who has a concern would be able to fill out some kind of a claim form,
Yes.
right? They shouldn't be turned away at the door.
no, not that no, I mean, there can be any number, I'm a lawyer, so there can be any number of circumstances where things could happen, but the bottom line is, of course, no one would be turned away if they have questions or would like to assert a claim. That's
Right, because you don't even know what the details are until you've kind of got it in front of you on paper,
right,
right? So that's open to anybody to fill that paperwork out.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And then the second thing is the USD intern program. What kind of compensation are we giving the interns?
Those interns, I believe, would be unpaid. I'd have to double check that, but basically what that is, I mean, that's separate from the internship program that they have at large, where they're bringing in interns, and I know there's some projects related to this. This would be, in effect, a collaborative arrangement with the law school where their director of experiential learning and Daniel Hager there are in coordination as to what that will look like. So some of that's still under development, so don't hold me to that, but my understanding is the goal there would be that those law students could work, gain some real life experience, and to the extent that USD Law School would give credit for that, I don't know. But at this time, the point there is to give them the opportunity to learn and receive some value in exchange. So, you know, at some point I'd have to ask Daniel to brief on more details of that. So I don't want to overcommit because I know there have been other discussions about interns being paid, so.
And how many interns are you thinking would?
You know, that's still under development. You know, our goal is to, you know, we would like to start with, I think, 200 contacts a year, where, again, there's an educational component to it, as well as this mediation type arrangement where one of the overarching themes of this is the more cases that we can help resolve between landlords and tenants, the better for the residents of our community, and also the better the court's docket would be, because if we can avoid evictions, those are very difficult for people. The primary reason being because, of course, it involves their housing. But the flip side of that is there's a very different procedural process for evictions where it's essentially streamlined, where the timelines for a notice to quit is a 3-day notice, and after that, they're entitled to a jury trial on an abbreviated schedule, which is very difficult for the courts to absorb when you fit that into all the other full dockets that they have there. So the effort and the intent there is to marshal some of the hours that we could capture from people who could benefit from that in the form of law students, but also ease the tension for tenants, many of whom struggle to understand the contracts that they've signed, because that's what leases are, and thus the educational component.
So what you're saying, the housing legal aid group is still a concept
Yes.
that
I mean,
we see here?
It's a BHAG. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal.
And so when will this be, could this be implemented in 2 years,
The goal
5
is by
years?
June 1st. We have a schedule by the end of the year to start interviewing and identifying law students that are interested in this. We've identified a couple local attorneys who are willing to assist in that process, and of course, our office would support that as well. So we're hoping to do it within the next 12 months.
Okay, and those local attorneys would be doing that pro bono then?
Yes.
Okay, well, what I would request, and maybe our wonderful employee sitting back there, Jim David, can make a little note of having you come back in and give us the final cooked-up version. So we have we'll know how many interns are involved, if they will be paid, the details that we can tell the community.
Sure, yeah.
Does that sound
we'd
fair
be
enough?
happy
Because
to.
right now, it still sounds like it's a little runny.
Yeah, well, and part of this goal and the way to bring it together is how do we reach the folks that have the need to, how do we find them? Is it through the docket and those that are already in litigation or working with housing groups and that sort of thing, so.
But you're still trying to decide who the players are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, we have an idea, but at some point you've got to, when you say, okay, we have law students, you still got to go through the process of identifying those interested, interviewing, making sure they understand. So, yeah, there's some personnel stuff that needs to be done.
And would they be on site in your office?
Yes.
So,
Yep, it would be a city hall thing.
so you could be bringing 10 young people in.
Yeah, potentially, there'd be a schedule, and we're hoping to reach a lot of people, to reach a lot of the need, and that's where the educational component can loom large, because again, you sign a 4-page lease, which again is a binding contract. If people don't understand that, or if English is not their first language, it's a challenge. So we're hoping to help those people to benefit both sides of the contract, so to speak. Landlords and tenants.
Councilor Neisert.
There's quite a bit of state law and rules that regard landlord-tenant relationships. In fact, the Attorney General has a booklet on it. Unfortunately, a lot of it really comes down to somebody may have to take legal action if they feel like, for example, the landlord isn't holding up their end of the bargain, or for example, they feel like they're being evicted for complaining, retaliation. And I don't know if this would be outside of the scope of this group, but I would hope that you might look at also helping in those cases too. If somebody feels like I'm being evicted because of maybe I filed or I complained a month ago about something that was going on, or maybe even and again, if the scope gets too big, I've complained to my landlord about X, they're not fixing it. Could you help me find the resources where I can try to exert some influence to get them to fix it, because I'm of limited means and I can't do it myself?
Well, and that is a component of it. I know we've had some discussions about that, and that's one of the charms, frankly, about this falling under the Human Relations Commission, because that's an office that helps ensure, that helps prevent and pursue discrimination within our community. And there is state statute on the retaliation component. But when you take, and the goal, again, if you have law students who are eager to learn and gain experience, and you've got existing attorneys both inside and outside the city who are willing to help, those are the types of questions people can come in and ask. And everybody wins in that regard, is our thought process. So.
Okay, thank you.
Well stated.
Anybody else? Yeah, let me just do this real quick. We're going a little long, but is there anybody here to do public input? At this point, I don't think I see anybody. Okay, so I think we're safe going a little bit longer. Councilor Kiley?
Thank you. Well, really, my only question is, why no video? I know the disappointment is just oozing off of Counselor Sale here. I could just sense it.
You know, the horror that I experienced when I saw the other videos and knowing I didn't have one, I thought, well, I'm going to hide behind the fact that my budget's essentially unchanged. But I have a face for radio, I guess, Counselor, is what I would tell you.
Face the same horror.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Counselor Starr.
And we're squeaking this in. I guess my quick question, because I don't remember, did we end up doing, I see that we have the Multicultural Center funding under your budget. Is there a liaison from your office, or is that board filled by the mayor and it's just a place where we place this, or is there more hands-on than that?
There is a mayoral appointed member of their board. As far as the liaison with my office, because of the fact that the budget does go through them, that would be Daniel Hager in the HRC as well. Obviously compatible with the anti-discrimination component. And Daniel and I have gone through and met with those folks just to learn more about it. Obviously, you know, it's important that we're diligent and good stewards of the city's resources to ensure that that good program is, you know, is using those funds diligently. So,
Do we, if I can, Mr. Chair, do we have a current contract in place with them, and then expectations of what we're looking at for the return on the investment that we're making?
yeah, that's one of the things that we discussed with them is that type of measurable, those types of results. And so as far as an existing contract, I have to go back and look what we have, but the renewed emphasis that we've had on this is just to ensure that, again, on the stewardship component that we're, you know, and they have a presentation and a briefing, and if they haven't been here before, and I think they have.
I just couldn't remember where we were at. We updated a lot of those contracts within the last couple of years, and so I couldn't remember doing that one or not seeing it. That's more my memory than anything else. The other quick thing, I'm looking at training and education line. I'm impressed with the number of staff and professional staff that you have. Is that sufficient to keep everyone updated? I'm sure there's continuing education in your field, and how do we handle that? I mean, it seems pretty reasonable that we're keeping everyone certified or that their law license is updated with that amount of training.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I'm glad you bring it up. I did ask for an increase of $3,000 on that, and again, not to bring up the military mind component of that, but we have excellent attorneys and staff in our office, and one of the things that I've learned over the years is that the nose to the grindstone thing is great, but at some point you've got to pause and take a look and say, hey, what else is going on out there? I know all of you have gone to various things like that. And so the model that, in effect, I've adopted on that is it's aligned with the Air Force JAG Corps, which is that every 2 years you're required to go to some type of training like that, and CLE, continuing legal education. And so the goal of our office and that budget is based on the ability of each staff member and attorney to be able to go once every 2 years to some conference or training to ensure that we're not overdoing it, but that we're not underdoing it, because of course there's a balance there. And since that was a model that I've seen succeed for the last dozen plus years on the military side, I felt like that was a good fit, and we were close. Based on our estimates, we were about $3,000 difference, and thus the change.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else? My only question is, you talked about your staff organization, and you said it changed a little bit since you've been on, and maybe I missed it, what part that was, but what has changed?
Oh, in effect, Karen Leonard is functioning now as what I would call a true deputy. When I arrived, in effect, you would have moved Karen down into the other levels, and they were essentially all supervised directly by the city attorney. But with this, you know, with city growth and with the scope of services that we provide, and the fact that she is categorized as a deputy, is that she is now the direct supervisor for, again, what I'd refer to as that legal services component. And that way I can supervise them through her, and then I can directly supervise the other components. Daniel Hager, of course, is an attorney, but he's assigned directly to that HRC role. And with risk management and licensing, it made sense to divvy up some of that managerial responsibility, particularly because as I came in, I handled different subject matters. A lot of it similar to my predecessor, but took on some things that when you come to marshaling time and the balance of the workload, that was the primary change. And then of course we added Eric Bogue as a full-time attorney in Public Works, whereas that was Diane Best on a part-time capacity prior to. And then the other change was that we had a paralegal over in Public Works, and we converted that slot into the risk specialist position because of the needs in the risk management department. And then we were able to hire Charlotte Swenis as an additional contracts attorney due to the departures of Colleen Moran and Katie Dunn. And so we were able to consolidate some of those efforts, push the accessibility ADA stuff into Public Works because that's such an engineer-driven component, reviewing plans to ensure they're compliant with the ADA. We're shifting that into Public Works, and that freed us up to hire the contracts attorney, which relieved Karen Leonard of some of those duties that she could step into that managerial role. So.
A lot of shifting, right? Okay.
There's your 6-minute increment answer.
Okay, well, thanks again for coming back. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Do we have now anybody here for public input on anything on the agenda? Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.